I'm Catherine Martin from the University of Alberta in the Faculty of Nursing, and today we're going to talk about how to prepare an intravenous line. First thing we need to do is gather our supplies, check the physician's order to know which kind of intravenous solution has been ordered to infuse into your patient. And then you need to gather that intravenous solution, which comes in a plastic covering bag, so you have to read through the bag and ensure you've got the correct solution. We need to have an infusion set, intravenous infusion set, and be sure you read the label to know the drop factor. In this case, the little drop indicates that the drop factor of this tubing is 20. You'll need to have your label for your intravenous line. You will need to have a Luer lock to go at the end of your intravenous line, which connects into the extension tubing for the patient. Finally, we will need an alcohol swab. First thing we're going to do is open your intravenous solution, and you'll notice at the top of the plastic bag there's always already a cut. We just tear down in that area and that opens your solution. Once you take your solution out of the bag, it could feel moist or somewhat damp, like it has been sweating, and that is fine, that is acceptable. What we need to do is just give it a gentle squeeze to ensure there's no holes or punctures. Have a look and inspect your intravenous solution. Ensure there's no cloudiness or anything floating around inside the bag that is clear solution. Check the title and ensure you've got the right solution, the expiry date, and know the amount that you have there. At this point, you're going to hang your solution bag on the pole. The next thing we want to do is open up your infusion tubing. Like all sterile packaging, there is always an end that's left open for you to hold, to tear down. So just open your packaging at that end and peel back. Take your tubing out of the package. And the first thing you do with all intravenous tubing is open it up, stretch it out, and ensure that you have the correct tubing. Okay. You'll notice with intravenous tubing, the first part at one end is called a drip chamber. And this is the area where you can watch the drops of fluid infusing into the patient. It's covered at the top with a plastic spike, which is protected with a plastic covering. Anytime you see a plastic covering on anything, it tells you that that area that it is covering must remain sterile. The next thing you'll notice on a drip chamber is a little door or plastic opening. That is called an air port. And we often don't use that, but it is available if at any time you have to allow air to get in to support the infusion. Other than that, the door remains closed. As you go down the tubing, the first thing you will come across is called a white back check valve. And the purpose of this back check valve is just to prevent any fluid from moving back up into the primary infusion bag. The next area that you come across is our first injection port. This is called an injection port. And when you're putting fluid through this and clearing your line, you have to be aware that there's often an air bubble hiding in this injection port that we need to clear out. Going down the line, the next thing you're going to come across is a plastic covering for a part of the tubing that feels a little bit differently, and this is the part of the tubing that's going to fit into the smart pump if you're using a pump. The next thing we have is a roller clamp, and it's important to know how to work your roller clamp because that's how you're going to control your rate of the fluid moving through your tubing. So in one hand, to close it, you just roll and push it down tight to ensure it won't move on the line, and then you know the roller clamp is closed. You roll it up, it will move. And then when you roll it down, it will be stuck and you know it's closed. Going down the line, the next thing you'll come across is one more injection port. And finally, at the end of your line, this is the end of the line that's going to connect to the patient, we have another plastic covering. We need to keep that part sterile. And on the end of this plastic covering, we're going to put a Luer lock. Your Luer lock here at the University of Alberta is a yellow clamp called a Luer lock cannula. So again, it's a sterile packaging with an opening on the end. You just peel back, being sure not to touch that part because we do need to keep it sterile. And at the end of our intravenous line, we take off the plastic covering. And again, just connect the two ends. The IV tubing end just goes right in to the Luer lock and turns as a screw lock system. Turn and lock it. Then you can take your packaging off and it looks like this. Again, you'll notice there's a plastic covering on the end to keep the end sterile. So for right now, we can leave that on. Now we're going to clear our intravenous tubing line. It's full of air, and we need to put the intravenous solution in there. So the first thing I want to do before I connect it to my intravenous solution is make sure that it is clamped and closed so that it won't drain all over everything. Again, I'm holding my Luer lock, making sure it's closed. Now, I take my plastic covering off my spike, bring it over to my intravenous solution, and then keeping it sterile, I insert it into my intravenous solution. The next thing I want to do is squeeze my drip chamber a half to a third full, so that I have room to see the drops coming out of the bag into the drip chamber. But at the same time, I want to start to get rid of the air. To clear my line, I just hold my roller clamp in one hand, and I'm very slowly going to open it and allow the solution to start to come down my line. Clear the line of air by allowing the solution to run down the line. And the first thing I want to do when I'm doing that is invert my first injection port upside down, and with one hand very slowly start to let the solution run. Very slowly I can see it start to run down the line. There we go. Okay. Now, as it's running down the line, when it gets, first of all, just as the solution goes past the first injection port, I just want to give it one little flick. As I do that, that will displace the air and allow the air bubble to move out along the line. The next thing I want to do as the solution's going down the line, and I can see it coming out of my drip chamber, is invert the next injection port. And as the solution runs past it, just again, give it one flick, and that will displace the air bubble and allow the solution to carry it right out and drain. Once it gets to the end of my line, I can either drain it into a drainage port, or I can just shut it right off at that point. My line is now cleared of air. I'll just go back and check all the way through that I don't have any bubbles in the line. And the next thing I'm going to do is connect it to my patient. So what I need to do at this point is take my alcohol swab, and I take the extension tubing on the patient's intravenous and swab it off. I'm going to take the plastic covering off of the Luer lock cannula, and then I just open up the clamp part, connect it into the extension tubing, clamp it down, and then I'm just going to make sure my clamps are open to the patient. Holding the roller clamp, I will set the rate of the number of drops that I'm required to infuse. Before leaving, I just want to make sure I see 2 or 3 drops in the drip chamber, following right down on my line to ensure all my clamps are open to the patient, and I'm observing the infusion site to make sure there's no redness or swelling. And that's how you hang and clear preparing an intravenous line.